In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Good evening, my dear brothers and sisters. Remembering certain things not only helps them stick in our minds, but also reminds us, as humans, that we often forget many lessons. Those lessons we've learned can sometimes sit on a shelf, gathering dust. Bringing them back to the forefront, recalling them, provides a great opportunity for us to benefit from them again. In this program, we'll share one such story with you. For example, today is January 17th, 2025. How much time has passed since the events of Pharaoh and our mother Asiya, which I'll narrate shortly. In that profound story, full of lessons, centuries have passed. How many, we don't know. But it holds many lessons for the people of today. Let's revisit it. The ruler of Egypt, Pharaoh, woke up from his sleep in fear and panic. He sat on the edge of his bed, breathing heavily, as if gripped by the pangs of death, trying to calm himself. His mind was in utter turmoil. His distressed state woke Asiya as well. "My dear husband, what's wrong with you? What's this state you're in?" she asked. Pharaoh remained silent for a while, unable to respond. But soon words began to pour out of his mouth one after another. Yet Asiya could only make out the word dream from his frantic speech. "A terrifying dream," he kept saying. "What do you mean, my lord?" she asked. "What dream? What kind of dream?" Pharaoh explained. "In my dream I saw fire emerge, and it consumed my entire kingdom, leaving nothing behind." Asiya said, "Calm down. Don't be afraid. It's just a dream, not real. How could a dream like this scare you?" Pharaoh replied, "I've been having this dream for a long time." "Don't be afraid," she reassured him. "Nothing will happen to you. There's nothing to worry about. What you saw is just a dream, mere imagination. Tomorrow, we'll visit the great seer, and he'll interpret your dream. You'll feel at ease then." The next morning, Pharaoh went to his chamber and sat on his throne, adorned with precious jewels and pearls. With his grand crown and imposing stature, Pharaoh gave an impression of majesty to those around him. His throne was elevated 4 steps above the ground, surrounded by soft cushions and fine carpets for his viziers and visitors. When Pharaoh spoke or issued a command, the person before him would bow their head and eyes, standing in fear and submission, listening to his words. Those around him described him with attributes no mortal could possess, showing him reverence and adoration, as if worshipping him. Pharaoh had begun to believe their claims, falling into foolish arrogance and reckless pride. He was so enamored with himself that one day he stood before the people and declared himself a sacred and mighty God. He proclaimed that he controlled their worldly ranks, their deaths, their growth, and their strength, that he was the true Lord of life and sovereignty. He claimed no word of his could be defied, and whatever he willed would come to pass without question. "I am your God," he said. The great seer approached Pharaoh humbly, bowing and offering praises. Pharaoh straightened up and demanded his full attention. "O great seer," he said, "I had a terrifying dream. Every night I see the same dream and wake up in fear and panic." The seer replied, "O Pharaoh, my lord, calm yourself. How could a mere dream unsettle our revered God?" With a stern look, Pharaoh said, "I'm not afraid, but I want to know the meaning of this dream." The seer responded, "Then, O Pharaoh, tell me about the dream you saw." Pharaoh began to describe the dream that woke him in terror every night. The seer listened intently. When Pharaoh finished, he looked at the seer expectantly. The seer said, "O Pharaoh, this is a grave and dangerous matter." "What do you mean?" Pharaoh asked. The seer continued, "Among the Israelites, a child will be born who will cause the destruction of both you and your people." Pharaoh, shaken, asked, "Are you certain of what you're saying?" The seer replied, "Absolutely, my lord. This is the true interpretation of your dream." A chill ran through Pharaoh. After the seer left, Pharaoh, distressed by what he had heard, began pacing back and forth in his chamber. He needed to resolve this matter quickly to protect his wealth, his power, and his kingdom. He couldn't stop thinking about the seer's words. Finally, the devil whispered a plan to him. To ensure his safety and the continuation of his glorious reign, all male children born to the Israelites must be killed. After all, the Israelites were already enslaved. What difference would it make if they died? When the Israelites learned of Pharaoh's decree, they were helpless. Whenever a male child was born to them, Pharaoh's soldiers, informed by midwives, would mercilessly kill the infant to please their ruthless ruler. No one could oppose Pharaoh's cruel decision, and many lives were lost. Over time, the Egyptians noticed that the Israelite population was dwindling, leaving them short of servants to work in their homes and fields. They complained to Pharaoh, saying, "If this continues, and their male children keep dying, in a few years we'll have no servants left." In response, Pharaoh ordered that male children be killed every other year. Meanwhile, far from prying eyes, preparations for an event were underway. A woman named Jochebed was nearing the time of her delivery. She didn't know what to do. Despite the efforts of those tasked with monitoring the pregnancies of Israelite women, she had managed to keep her condition hidden, though it was incredibly difficult. These overseers were responsible for controlling the Israelite population. Jochebed had confided in a loyal friend who visited her regularly in the final days of her pregnancy. Finally, Jochebed gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. She named him Moses. Her heart overflowed with joy, as if the entire world belonged to her. But her happiness was short-lived, as the thought that her precious child might meet a tragic end filled her with dread. The fear that her baby would be taken and killed grew stronger with each passing hour. Desperate to protect her son, she felt as though she might lose her mind. She began to pray fervently, asking Allah to show her a way to save her child from Pharaoh's tyranny. She prayed tirelessly until, exhausted, she fell asleep, hoping for relief from her distress. When she awoke, her heart felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. She knew what to do. She called out to her daughter and asked her to bring a small basket. With love and tenderness, she placed her baby in the basket, kissed and held him close, tears streaming down her face. Then, she set the basket adrift on the waters of the Nile, weeping as she let go. The waves gently carried the basket away. Jochebed, unaware of where her child was headed, was consumed by the pain of separation, sobbing uncontrollably. Yet Allah placed patience and certainty in her heart. She trusted in Him. What else could console her? With a glimmer of hope, she asked Moses' sister to follow the basket and keep watch, never letting it out of her sight, to see where the river would take it. That same day, Pharaoh and Asiya were sitting by the Nile, enjoying the morning sun's radiant beauty and the cool breeze. They were surrounded by servants and members of the palace. Suddenly, Asiya's eyes caught sight of an object floating toward them along the riverbank. As it drew closer, it became clear. It was a wooden basket. Asiya ordered one of her servants to retrieve it. When she opened the basket, she was stunned to find a beautiful baby, still of nursing age, inside. the child instantly became the center of attention. Everyone marveled at his beauty, saying, "Look at this child. Who could be so heartless as to abandon him in the water?" Some played with him, others tried to make him laugh, and some lifted him into the air. Asiya took the baby into her arms, her heart filled with an indescribable warmth. She thought to herself, "His face resembles the Canaanites. He must be one of the Israelite children newly born. How did he escape my soldiers?" She turned to Pharaoh and said, "Don't harm him. I see in him a bright and exceptional intelligence, unlike others. He could be a source of comfort for us, and who knows, he might even benefit us in the future. Why not adopt him?" Pharaoh, who rarely refused Asiya's wishes, saw how much she wanted the child and ordered that the baby be given to her. Thus, by the will of Allah, Moses was saved from Pharaoh's decree. Asiya gazed at the baby with love and tenderness, gently stroking his hair. Allah had placed a deep affection for the child in her heart, as if he were her own. Suddenly the baby began to cry loudly. Asiya tried to soothe him, humming lullabies and rocking him, but to no avail. The baby was hungry and needed a wet nurse. A call was sent out to the city to find a woman to nurse the child. A woman was found and took the crying, hungry baby into her arms to nurse him, but he refused her milk. She tried again and again, but the baby wouldn't take it. Allah had another plan in motion. Asiya, frustrated, ordered her servants to find another wet nurse, saying, "Can't you see the child is starving?" Another woman came and tried to nurse the baby, but she too failed. Asiya ordered that every woman who had recently given birth and had milk be brought to the palace. Many came, each trying to nurse the crying, writhing baby, but none succeeded. The child continued to wail, and Asiya was at a loss, wondering why the baby refused the milk of so many women. Meanwhile, Moses' sister, who had followed the basket from the Nile to Asiya's hands, learned that the baby wouldn't nurse from any woman. She saw a perfect opportunity to reunite Moses with his mother. She approached Asiya and said, as mentioned in the Quran, "Shall I direct you to a household that will care for him and treat him well?" Asiya, desperate, agreed, saying, "This child's crying is breaking my heart. His cries bring me sorrow. Let's do it quickly." Moses' sister rushed back home, told her mother everything, and brought her to the palace. When Asiya handed the baby to Yocheved, the moment she took him into her arms, the baby stopped crying. He nestled into his mother, eagerly seeking her milk, and began to nurse contentedly. Asiya was overjoyed and realized this woman was suitable to be the baby's wet nurse. She arranged a place for her in the palace to care for the child. From then on, Yocheved could see her son every day and live a peaceful life. Little Moses, the darling of the palace, won everyone's hearts with his mother's care and Asiya's love. One day, Pharaoh, wanting to play with Moses, as fathers do with their sons, took him into his arms. But Moses grabbed Pharaoh's beard and pulled hard. Pharaoh was so enraged that he nearly lost his mind. At that moment, one of the palace seers approached and said, "My lord, I believe this child may be the one from your dreams, the one who will cause you to lose your kingdom and throne." The seers had been whispering among themselves that this child, who escaped death at the hands of the soldiers, was likely an Israelite. Fear gripped Pharaoh's heart, fear of losing his wealth, throne, and power. "Take this child and kill him at once," he ordered. Asiya leapt to her feet and protested, "What sin has this little child committed to deserve death?" Pharaoh snapped, "Don't you see what he did to me, how he mocked me?" Asiya replied, "He's just a baby. He doesn't know what he's doing." Pharaoh insisted, "No, this child will be my downfall. Didn't you hear what the seer said?" Asiya pleaded, "Oh, my dear husband, my esteemed lord, please think calmly. He's just a tiny child with no understanding. Let me prove it to you. Let's place a tray with some rubies and precious items, and another with burning coals. If he reaches for the coals instead of the rubies, you'll see he's just an innocent child with no understanding. But if he chooses the rubies, then you can say he's clever and do as you wish." Pharaoh agreed, saying, "That's a good idea." The trays were brought, and as always, by Allah's will, a miracle was about to unfold. Moses reached for the coals, proving his innocence. Thus, under Asia's protection, Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, treated as one of their own. Asiya secretly showed kindness and mercy to the Israelites. Fearing Pharaoh and his men would discover her actions, at times, she would secretly visit the capital, Memphis, to attend to the troubles of the Israelites. One day, while in the city, she saw two men fighting, one an Israelite, the other an Egyptian. The Israelite, recognizing Moses as someone who often helped them, called out for his aid. Moses, wanting to help the oppressed man, struck the Egyptian on the chest. Unintentionally, the blow was fatal, and the Egyptian collapsed and died. Moses, a man of great strength, was deeply remorseful, as his intention was only to separate the two, not to kill. The next day, while walking in the city, Moses saw the same Israelite fighting with another man. The Israelite called out to Moses for help again. As Moses approached to intervene, the man said, as recorded in the Quran, "O Moses, do you intend to kill me as you killed someone yesterday? You only want to be a tyrant on earth, not a reformer." With those words, he revealed to the Egyptian that Moses was the one who had killed the man the previous day. Pharaoh's soldiers, who had been at the scene but couldn't identify the killer, now had their answer. When Pharaoh heard the news, he was furious and ordered Moses to be captured and killed on the spot. However, a man in Pharaoh's service, who secretly believed in Allah, quickly warned Moses of the danger. Moses fled Egypt and traveled to Midian, a distant city, escaping Pharaoh's wrath. There he stayed with the righteous prophet Shu'aib, married one of his daughters, and served him for 10 years, as we've shared before in the stories of the prophets. Let us now turn to the final moments of our mother Asiya. Over the years, Asiya had been separated from Moses and longed to see him even once. She tirelessly sent messengers to gather news about him. One day, a commotion arose at the palace gates. Asiya sent someone to investigate the loud voices coming from below. A servant returned and said, "Moses and his brother Aaron have come to the palace gate. They wish to speak with Pharaoh." Moses had been given the task of prophethood, and his brother Aaron was appointed by Allah to accompany him in calling Pharaoh to faith. Asiya rushed to the throne room, alarmed that Moses, who had fled Egypt and not returned for 10 years, had now come with such dignity and authority. She stood between Moses and Pharaoh, hoping to reconcile them and find a peaceful resolution. When Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh, he asked what they wanted. Moses said, "Allah has sent me as a messenger and prophet to guide people to the right path and to worship the one who created them and provides their sustenance. I invite you to believe in the Allah who has given you health, strength, and sovereignty." Pharaoh scoffed. "Didn't we raise you in our palace? Didn't you spend years among us?" Moses replied, "I don't deny that you raised me in your palace and among your family. But Allah has chosen me as a prophet to guide people to salvation. I've come to you today, by Allah's command, to ask you to stop oppressing the Israelites, to set them free, and to allow them to leave with me for the Levant." Pharaoh and his people, the Copts, enslaved and tormented the Israelites, with the killing of their newborn boys being the cruelest of their atrocities. Instead of responding to Moses' request, Pharaoh mocked, "Who is this Lord of the worlds you speak of?" Moses answered, "If you were people who reasoned and understood, you would acknowledge that he is the Lord of the heavens, the earth, and all that lies between them." Pharaoh laughed scornfully, saying to those around him, "Do you hear what he's saying?" Moses continued, "The Lord of the worlds is your Lord, and the Lord of your forefathers." Pharaoh, turning to his court, said, "Your so-called messenger is clearly mad." Moses, undeterred by Pharaoh's mockery, continued to speak of his Lord, saying, "If you use your intellect, you'll understand that he is the Lord of the heavens, the earth, and all that is between them." Pharaoh, rejecting everything, repeatedly declared his own divinity and began threatening Moses. Yet Moses persisted, inviting Pharaoh to faith without fear. Seeing that words and arguments were failing to convince him, Moses said, "If I bring you a clear sign, will you still throw me into prison?" Pharaoh replied, "If you're telling the truth, then show it." With Allah's permission, Moses threw down his staff, and it transformed into a massive, terrifying serpent. Everyone in the royal chamber was gripped with fear, even Pharaoh, who claimed to be a god. Moments later, Moses grabbed the serpent by its head, and it reverted to a staff. The onlookers were still reeling from the shock when Moses placed his hand under his armpit and withdrew it, radiating a brilliant light that illuminated the entire palace. Asiya watched these astonishing events with awe and conviction. She already knew that what Moses brought was true, for she had never known him to lie. His noble character and trustworthiness were evident. Yet Pharaoh refused to believe in Moses or his message, claiming he too had many miracles. He ordered his aides to gather all the magicians in the land and bring them to the palace. Magic was widespread in Egypt at the time. On the appointed day, Moses arrived at the city square, where a large crowd had gathered to witness the confrontation between Pharaoh's magicians and Moses. The magicians lined up, holding ropes and staffs. Their leader stepped forward and said to Moses, "O Moses, either you show your skill first, or we will." Moses replied, "You go first." The magicians threw their ropes and staffs to the ground, and through their sorcery, they appeared as writhing snakes. The square seemed filled with serpents, and the crowd believed they were real. Moses grew anxious, fearing the people would believe the magicians. But Allah reassured him, saying, "Do not fear. You are superior. Throw what is in your right hand, and it will swallow what they have produced. Their work is merely a magician's trick, and a magician will never succeed, no matter where he goes." Moses threw down his staff, and it became a massive, fearsome serpent. To the magician's horror, it slithered toward their illusory snakes and swallowed them one by one. The crowd was astounded, and the magicians, realizing this was no trick, but a divine miracle, fell into prostration, declaring their faith in the Lord of Moses and Aaron. Pharaoh and his entourage were shocked to see the magicians prostrate and profess faith. Furious, Pharaoh shouted, "You dare believe in him, Without my permission? Is he not the one who taught you your magic? I swear I will cut off your hands and feet on opposite sides and hang you on palm trunks. Then you'll see whose punishment is more severe and lasting." But the magicians, their hearts filled with the light of faith, stood firm. They replied, "We cannot prefer you over the clear signs that have come to us and the one who created us. Do as you will. You only rule in this worldly life. We believe in our Lord, that he may forgive our sins and the magic you forced us to perform. His reward is better and everlasting." Enraged, Pharaoh ordered the magicians to be killed that day, as an example to others. But the people began to see the truth and realized Pharaoh's claim to divinity was false. From the palace balcony, Asiya watched the events unfold, her heart aligned with Moses. When she saw the magicians prostrate and declare their faith, she too proclaimed, "I believe in the Lord of Moses and Aaron." Pharaoh learned from a servant that his wife, Asiya, had also embraced faith in Allah. His fury was uncontainable. What would he do to the one closest to him? He summoned his viziers and asked, "What should I do?" They said, "She is a good and wise woman." Pharaoh pressed, "What if you knew she worshipped someone other than me?" Shocked, they replied, "Then kill her and be rid of her." Pharaoh ordered that Asia's hands and feet be bound with ropes and a massive boulder be placed on her chest. He said, "If she renounces her faith, release her. If not, let her die." Asiya was subjected to this torture in a public place for all to see. For days, people watched in sorrow, powerless to help. One day, Moses secretly visited her. Asiya, still bound and suffering under the weight of the boulder, was in immense pain. She signaled to him with her hands, unable to speak. Moses, heartbroken, understood her meaning. He raised his hands and prayed to Allah to ease her suffering. Allah accepted his prayer, and Asiya felt no more pain. She began to smile, her agony gone. Allah rewarded her beautiful patience, granting her a vision of her palace in paradise. She said, "Who are they torturing? Let them do their worst. I have seen my place in paradise." She reaffirmed her faith in Allah and surrendered her soul, departing this world. As she endured her torment, she prayed, "My Lord, build for me a home in paradise. Save me from Pharaoh and his deeds, and save me from the unjust people." Her prayer was answered, and she earned an eternal place among the unforgettable figures of history. Let us note this in history. Today is January 17th, 2025. We don't know exactly how long ago this event took place, but we live in a world where people have lived and died for their faith. Let us remember this once more. Peace be upon our mother Asiya, and may Allah elevate her rank. Amen. Dear friends, thank you for joining us in this reminder and reflection. May we all be among those who take lessons from it. Until we meet again in another program, forgive any mistakes in my words. Peace be upon you, and the mercy and blessings of Allah. Praise be to Allah, and peace and blessings be upon His Messenger.